Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. This is Grand Arena, the first match of Season 35. Happy New Year, everyone. We are starting this season off in Kyber 3. A win will get us back into Kyber 2. And then we'll be able to climb up throughout the rest of the week and hopefully have a secure spot for the rest of the season. But before we get started, a quick look back at how the last week went. Round 1, my opponent didn't attack. Round 2, this is when my opponent had 6 GLs and set 5 of them on defense. There wasn't much I could do. I gave it a good shot though. My opponent, I think he didn't full clear me, but I think he also stopped playing. He had a nest timeout. Probably not really the team to take it against. He used Bossk here up against CLS, but CLS is a counter to Bossk Zam, so that is not a surprise it didn't work. He used Boba Fett lead up against Bam. Jango would have been a better try. Boba Fett's not really a great lead. Qui-Gon, I'm not sure if he had the Omicron with some nonsense Jedi. And then Inquisitors up against Bam in the final round. This opponent didn't engage with fleet and didn't have a fleet to win, so I was able to have plenty of room to work with this match. Attempted Geos up against Mon Mothma, Padme up against Mon Mothma, probably with preloaded turn meter at that point, which wasn't going to go well. Jango up against Qui-Gon, worth the shot, that's a little risky. He cleaned it up ultimately with Night Sisters. If he had relics on his DACA, that's something he could have probably succeeded in one shot. Well, it's basic stuff. Let's get started with this week's bracket. My opponent is Darth Helmet. You can see we're all kind of in line with each other with overall GP, with Zetas. Great Dragon here is probably the guy to pay attention to. Everyone else is kind of in the same range. Omicrons. My opponent is at 11. Actually, Great Dragon only has 6. That's interesting. Everyone else is in that kind of 10-ish range. GLs. See, the mode here is 4, probably an average closer to between 4 and 5. My opponent with 5. Relic units, pretty wide range, as high as 154. 161's the highest. Probably the 120 range is fairly standard. My opponent at 159 is a little shallow, but around 150 is where he'll probably have enough depth for Kyber at this point, or Kyber 3 at least. 6-stop mods, kind of all over place with counts, but that's not what really matters. It comes down to those averages. Top 25 averages of plus 25. Everyone's pretty well modded at the top end. With the top 500, this is a good bracket. There's a couple players who are a little lower off screen, but plus 15.5 and up-ish in that range. And then a lot of players with averages of plus 16 speed, and that's pretty good. With the counts, everyone is kind of in the same range. No one's like glaringly bad. Everyone is... this is a bracket of well-modded people, but we're on the verge of all climbing into Kyber 2, so that's probably why we're seeing a lot of that. With datacrons, with the new set of datacrons, not as many people have got them developed. I made a valiant effort for the lock-in, but didn't really get a great set. I wanted to get some good Inquisitor ones, but those are in progress. Next week we'll have like the Grand Inquisitor datacrons. I even have a Jabba one now, but I don't have Jabba. And everyone else, this FRM player probably has the next best set of datacrons for the bracket. And he's a 2GL player, so he's going to be somebody I'm going to be paying attention to for the future, because he is probably a savvy player. One player, Great Dragon here, has Lord Vader. Nobody has Jabba. Everyone else has some standard stuff. Rey is the next character that players are lowest on. With the Omicrons, so 2 players without Melgus, 1 player without Starkiller. My opponent doesn't have Iden, which is interesting. Iden And he is usable at low stars and like gear 8. It doesn't matter. You throw the Omicron on her and she's good to go. There's no excuse not to have Iden at any level. She's too good to not be using and not putting that Omicron on. With the other Amis, looks like most players have gotten the message on Savage. Actually, not really. 1, 2, 3. Half the bracket doesn't have the Savage Ami. Half of us do and have brought him to Relics. The other one that's a little surprising is Traya. Only 3 of us have the Traya Omicron. That's a no-brainer. You put that one on. Don't worry about Relics. Don't worry about the rest. That's Omicron. Completely elevates her. Only 2 of us have Swolo, and my opponent is the only other player who has him. 1 player without Maul, 1 player without him at Relics. And then you can see my opponent, he's missing a few characters that he really should have. Like his Echo here, he doesn't have. His Iden, he doesn't have. These are important characters that are usable at some lower ranges. Like you can see at the far end, Rigger, let me tweak how that's lining up. Rigger here has Echo at gear 9. That's plenty fine. That's fine. You're not going to do some of the higher end counters, but it'll clean up plenty of squads. You can use that in a ton of places. Don't delay a squad as powerful as the Bad Batch. Now with the Profundity, 3 players don't have it at all, but some other so the Profundity advantage is shrinking pretty quick, but that's just in time for the Scythe to come in to give us players who care about fleet another strength. Looking at the hotbot, our guilds are similar, mine's slightly larger. The clears and undersizes are lower, but they're actually fairly reasonable, but that's notable because looking at his Grand Arena history, I'm expecting some inconsistent participation. These other items we've taken a look at. He's got a few extra Omicrons that are Territory War Omicrons. His relic distribution is fairly standard. That I'm just looking here for if they're top heavy or not. He is not top heavy. His GLs are fine. We've got a speed advantage on JMK, JML. He's got the advantage. He actually has a speed advantage on a number of characters, but that's less important because we don't play mirrors all that often. So let's take a look at the defenses. So before that, we're going to take a look at the speeds here. I recorded this earlier, so you'll get a feel for things. I think he had about 22 for his number of characters above 300 speed. There's the 3 rows there, and his ARC Trooper is the character to pay attention to. Yeah, so 22 characters, that's pretty good. Looking at the defense now, I made some changes. I forgot to make some other changes. I made sure everyone who could have a datacron has a datacron. Even if they're light side and they're dark side datacrons, at least get some extra stats on them. Like, I don't care. Just find any advantage you can find. Everyone who can should have those datacrons. Now, I threw Raddus on defense. It's the better place to use him. Here's where I made a mistake. I forgot to take the Profundity off of defense here. I did it in 5v5 and then I forgot about it in 3v3. You can see this is pretty manageable. I'm a little worried about Raddus only because I had been using Traya as my counter, and now I don't feel like with the Traya on me, I feel like it might be a waste of Traya. He's got Race Swolo for us to deal with. And what I want to do here, since I think my opponent is not going to participate with the amount of time that is left, I want to use this match because so much time has passed since 3v3. I want to be able to do as much stress testing as I can for the rest of the season. There's a lot of new characters. There's a lot of new Omicrons and changes in gear and relics that have occurred to my roster that we're going to want to put into practice and know how things work. We got the Grand Inquisitor now. We have the Traya. A lot of things have changed in the month since 3v3. So with this match here, let me pause this for a second so we can talk about it in detail. I'm trying to find a good one for them. I think I'd go with some turn meter. I've re-rolled a lot of these level 3 abilities for next week, but I couldn't do it before lock-in. Now, with Rey Swolo here, like we probably would do gas in 5v5. We could definitely do Palpatine here, but this is what I'm talking about with the stress testing, is my only GL options are going to be JMK, JML. I want to avoid using GLs if I can. And I need to see now that Swolo is being a little bit more common, that I have appropriate 3v3 counters. So we're going to use Starkiller to see where mine stands. Because I have a Relic 5 Palpatine, for instance. I want to make sure that my Palpatine is at a level that is going to be able to handle these matches. It's something that I don't know definitively or not. So this is what, because this is a counter that does work. The question is, does mine work? So I'm using the basics, driving the stacks on Starkiller, getting those assists. I think there's things like I probably should have just done a basic. There are times when I could have been pulling the basic earlier that maybe that would have been the better call. We have to wait for the damage immunity to come off and for Rey to get out of that stance, so we're just buying a little time. But we lose Palpatine, and that's what I'm a little concerned about with my Starkiller. Plus, he could be faster, and I might want to add a relic level to him. I probably should add a relic level to him. So this is what I want to establish for this season, is to make sure that my non-GL counters can work. And right now, this one doesn't. And that's probably going to be fairly important. Now, this is something that I wanted to test for myself, but looking at the Grand Arena counter information on SWGOH, there wasn't evidence of it working, but I want to see things for myself. Since especially for this match, I was fairly confident my opponent, again, wasn't going to participate or participate fully, which meant I was probably going to win, so I didn't care about banners and being super efficient. Instead, I want to get as much information as possible. I want to see why things don't work as much as I want to see what does work. So we play this because in 5v5, gas works great up against Rey Swolo. I beat it a number of times with mine. I want to see in 3v3 why we're not seeing that in the counter data. And it just doesn't go great. Those extra attacks, the extra bodies help. And without their assistance, we don't really make any progress. So and it also draws out counters that we could use elsewhere, like that's a Maul counter, that's a Raddus counter that we could be relying on. So now we got to clean it up. I'm wary about using JMK here because of the mechanics of the Omicron on Swolo, where you can't take him out under certain circumstances with Rey there. You have to get the damage down low enough. But from the Grand Arena data, the SWGOH data, it does work. So I go for it because there's actually a higher percentage of it working than the JML counters. So we go with this. It's fine. We gotta make sure we get everyone to the health thresholds. So we get rid of the sacrifice because that's not going to be how we win this. We need to get people into the red. I need to be attacking Swolo now, but I'm just staying focused on her for some reason a little too long. Now he's in the red. Throw the damage immunity up. I want to get healing immunity on him. Take the hit. Throw down the ultimate, eliminate him, and then we take her out. It works good. It works fine. I'd prefer my Starkiller to work though. So then, because we don't need it in this match. My opponent might be a 5 GL player. Yeah, he's a 5 GL player. So I'm going up against a 5 GL opponent, but he only set down 1 GL. At least on the front lines. So with this opponent, it's not a big deal that my Starkiller wasn't working, but against another opponent this season, I might be needing my Starkiller to take out Rey. So that's one of the things we've established that I need to tweak for next week. Because probably even later this week, I might be in scenarios where I might not be able to win because that counter isn't at a level where I can rely on it. But it's something that's really worth doing with your roster is do stuff you don't have confidence in that works for other people and see what happens. Like this is really, I shouldn't be doing this in 3v3. This obviously works great in 5v5, but without Moff Gideon to reset the turn meter, it would work fine if I had relics. I don't have relics on these characters. And I feel like this is something I've relearned each 3v3 season, because I should build out a spreadsheet where I can remind myself about all this stuff. Now Maul here, I didn't want to mess around with Maul because he is in that upper tier of characters where if you try and use something good but you're not certain about, you could risk burning teams and not clearing, because it could eat a counter that you need up against other teams. So I just decided Traya on me, it's going to work with the stacking mechanic. They're not going to do any damage. As soon as the dots from Canderous were consumed, it set me below that 90% threshold so I could annihilate. There's no chance of me being taken out, so this is safe. And these are Gear 12 characters, so it's a great Omicron. In the future, I might try Nihilus lead again. We made a video on it. You can check out that video, the viable video where I show how it works up against a dash squad. But I want to get more data points of using Nihilus lead. We haven't used it as often as I would have liked. Now, because we only had that 1 week of testing, that last week of 5v5, CT didn't give us a lot of opportunity. Maybe I should have used my Savage here, because Nihilus is a little bit more flexible. But I think ultimately I decided to use Nest because the Savage, I want to try up against more other squads. Like, we know where Nest works and doesn't work, so I'm just clearing Nests and getting some banners. Savage, though, I still need to see how far I can push him. With Relic Geos, it's... This is one of those things where I would use Traya before. But that Omicron means I'm no longer ever using Traya up against Geos again. So Jawas it is, and it might mean that, and unfortunately they're going after Scavenger. But we get a little lucky. We're in a good position. So we can't take out Sunfac, but we took out everybody that matters. This is something we can clean up, but it's why it's nice to have Jawas in your back pocket, because it means I didn't have to use like a JKR team or using, I guess I could use Vader. I got out of using Vader up against Geos because of that datacron, but with that datacron gone, we could probably revert back to using Vader up against Geos. I'd still rather do Jawas. Vader's still too useful. Even though we don't have a dedicated Vader datacron, we can still... There's still datacrons that work well with them in this current set. Well enough. You know what? I should use that dot datacron with Vader. See how that does. I've just been using it with Wampa. But now that Vader doesn't have a dedicated datacron, that's something that we should do. Now the rest of it we've seen, it's a weak defense. It's real weak. There's some weird teams, there's a lot of relics, so there's some things I want to try, but some of these things don't make even too much sense. And this Bossk team is just fine. Nothing special. I want to use Savage here, although I'm not too confident about it because of how much they're going to be able to heal with the debuffs, but I have used Savage up against some Bossk teams and it's worked okay, but I think the issue is IG-88, because he's a debuff heavy bounty hunter, is just going to heal a ton. This entire squad's going to heal a ton because of the Bossk lead Zeta. And what I've done up again, at least in some 5v5 scenarios, is we've been able to get around Bossk and attack some of the other characters because of where the speeds are set. And I can never get more than one hit off against IG-88 before Bossk taunts again. So this would have been a place where Nest would have won, and we could have used Savage elsewhere. Nest's ability to ignore taunt is just fantastic. It's superior to what Savage can do. Savage is much more limited, and I'm going to have to keep increasing his relic levels because he's still not much of a damage dealer. Now he's just super tanky. So this is something that I deliberated on. The SWGOH GG counter data says to use Bastila. And my assumption was because all those buffs are going to increase the amount of damage, probably make it safer. But I only have a gear 11 Bastila. And I'm fairly certain she's going to be eliminated quickly, so I go with Jolie, even though there's like a 20% difference in the success rate. And what this is really going to demonstrate is why you use the Bastila. And this is why, again, why we're stress testing this round. We need to see where my counters stand because so many changes have happened to the strategy based on how things have changed. Like last 3v3 season, this was a Traya counter. Traya Ami means that like had my opponent set down like a Melgus, I wouldn't use Traya up against Raddus. So we need to find new counters to squads that we had solutions to before. And really that, for this scenario, would bring it down to like the gas probably would have used here if I wasn't testing gas elsewhere. You can see we just never really make a great progress. And the extra buffs from Bastila probably would have made a difference. I just feel like my Bastila would have been eliminated fairly early. But that right there is probably that's as close as we were able to get. Now I could have gone for Cassian first and hope that gave me an advantage, but Jin would have been able to revive him, and as soon as Raddus got off that like pseudo ultimate data thing, he would have been revived anyway, so I just wanted to focus down on Raddus. Now with where the clock is at, this is definitely not going to be a victory, because like what I've been able to establish is they're not going to be able to eliminate me or take anybody out. I just can't do anything else either. So what I want to do is set myself up for a favorable match next round. So I'm going to start giving some attention over to Cassian and eliminate him. Now, it's also something that maybe I should have just taken out Cassian from the beginning, because the cooldown on Jin's special is pretty sizable, where maybe we let Jin do the revive and then take out Cassian again, and then that might give me enough time to take out Raddus with just Jin and Raddus standing around. Yeah. So we time out. What it basically taught me is that's not a counter that I'm going to want to rely on with my roster. I think players with Relic Bastila, they can feel more confident about it, but and maybe I should test out my own Bastila and see how it would do. I just didn't want to do it this round. With the amount of counters I've already consumed, the Raddus deserved my best effort with that JKR squad. We've got a JML to clean it up, so it doesn't matter. It's fine. But I wanted to see how the Jolie would look for future matches. Now this we're confident is going to win. This is me just eliminating a squad. Maybe this probably would have been a good spot to test out the Hutt Cartel, though. There's some good, interesting testing coming up. But what I want to do is clear some of the board of some teams before we get to the fun and newer marquees and see how those go. Yeah. Alright, so this one's easy. This is just a JKL solo. Do I not do it right now? Do I do it later? Okay, I guess I do it later. Now here, this is a weak Padme team. We're just gonna Malak solo. And here I'm just looking for extra stats. I don't even really care what the level 3 abilities are. let's see. Like, there's some good stats. Tenacity, crit damage, potency. That's all going to help for this match. So that's what we go for. I feel like this is it's a counter I haven't done too much. Just it hasn't really come up for me all that often. Probably because I've had Malak on defense so much. Yeah, just basics. I probably could just autoed it, but I was playing it out. Now here we've got Grand Inquisitor now, and I want to see if we can split my Inquisitors up into 2 squads. The way I've played the Inquisitors prior to unlocking Grand Inquisitor was having 5th brother with the 7th and 9th sister. And I'm pretty sure he's going to need them. What I want to see is can Grand Inquisitor carry 2nd sister and 8th brother? Because really, like, this is not the ideal squad. I think 7th and 9th or 5th brother and 9th would be better with Grand Inquisitor, but I want to split them up into 2 squads. But what we're seeing is this doesn't really feel like a Qui-Gon counter, because they're just blasting these characters out of the way. Now 5th brother, I think he does have some stat sharing on his unique. I'd have to look at the uniques again to see if I think 5th brother's presence would have helped him take some of those hits. That was not promising. To the level where we bring in 5th brother to clean this up. I've got multiple Inquisitor datacrons now, but that all happened after the lock-in. I think we gave the one that I had prior to lock-in to Grand Inquisitor. So this one, they just got a level 3 ability. So this works fine, but it's some version like that to Grand Inquisitor would probably be better. But I want to find a way to split those squads into 2. Maybe it needs to wait until 3rd sister's around. Because that I didn't feel good about. At least up against Qui-Gon. It probably would have been fine up against other squads, but you'd think Inquisitors could be a Qui-Gon counter. It's not a good sign that they aren't, considering how much anti-Jedi purpose that they're supposedly supposed to have. It's interesting that Qui-Gon, out of all the Jedis they counter, Qui-Gon is just consistently is something they struggle with. At least in 3v3 and 5v5 it was. I guess I didn't have Grand Inquisitor at that point to try it out myself. I guess I could go search for some videos, see how other people did with it. This is me just cleaning this up with something that I know will win, because at this point Raddus, with the synergy between Jin and Admiral Raddus here, they're still going to be able to do some damage. So I want to use some people I know are going to just be able to handle it safely. And then we'll be able to get into some fun stuff after this. We're going to be looking at droids, looking at Hutt Cartel, Hondo, plenty of other things to be testing for the rest of this. Yeah, this is just a quick Jedi Knight Luke solo. Up against crew lead, he does great. Hux, in his unique stops, counters. So we just have to take out Hux first before we can really get going on this. Maybe we still do counter. Maybe it was his leadership. Whatever. Takes a little work, but we'll get there. All right, there we go. Alice in Borderlands Season 2 came out. I watched that right away. Cranked it out over in like, I think 3 days. Watched all the episodes, maybe it was 2 days. Just loved it. A couple things in there that weren't as good. Not weren't. It was exactly the same. The same problems where if you think about it too much, some things will fall apart, but don't think about it too much, and it's just tons of fun. I like the premise. I like the concept. I like the ideas, and for the most part, it's executed really well. So, the big thing here is I've had a lot of success of Hutt Cartel up against Nute and Django. What I'm finding are the scenarios in which they don't work, and that is when Watt is around, and it is now clearly when Asajj is around, because Asajj removing those buffs, getting rid of the taunt, getting rid of the stealth, completely messed things up. And it's why, like, they would have worked up against the Nute and the droids, have beaten things like that before. But it's really helpful because up against Django, because as long as the damage immunity is off, those thermals go off, we don't have to worry about the revive. And those are the scenarios I like to use. What's the big difference here is I now have Relic 5 Swolo, no Omicrons, and the big difference here is the amount of damage that he's doing, because at Gear 12 he wasn't a damage dealer. All I used him for was this mechanic where he can't be taken out, so he just becomes a soft tank, everyone else stays under stealth, and I'm able to do some damage. And now you can see he's starting to take people out, and he's doing a lot of work damage-wise that he wasn't doing for me the past, I guess, almost 3 months now since he's been unlocked. 2 months. So, and that's without the Omicron. And with the Omicron, maybe he doesn't need to be Relic 7 to start one-hitting characters. But I don't even know if I'm going to put the Omicron on, because that's good enough. Like, yeah, he's not going to one-hit people right now, but do I need him to? I don't know if I do. It's just a matter of how much can he punch up. I wanted to use them up against something better, but the defense that was set here was... The defense that was set was so soft that I think, even though we're trying to test things out, there's limited things that we're learning. I should use the basic there. Stun him instead, because it didn't really take that long to come off. I'm just trying to get more stacks. I miss that datacron, the Vader datacron. But I guess the Lord Vader one being gone makes losing the Vader one worth it. But I became pretty reliant on that Vader datacron for things like Starkiller counters. So we're going to need some new solutions. And I know I think I need to study and look at how I'm going to want to handle some of these squads now that we don't have Vader to handle a few of them. What did we do here? Oh yeah, okay. So I want to use Sana here. It's a kind of Empire squad that's not a serious threat. It's just their high relics. So I want to see how this goes. Although I don't really like Sana. I guess we do it later. Or did I change the team? Okay, we do Sana here. That's what happened. All those AoEs, we're going to take Sana out. Because 3-star Sana I have determined to be not great and very easy to eliminate. So I would take her up against this Mace team instead because they don't have AoE abilities and that will give me a better shot. But we got to deal with Barriss and that Barriss Zeta, and we're making very limited progress. It takes a while for us to eliminate her. But things are working okay, I guess. So we take out Barriss, that makes things much easier from here. And I think with more stars on Sana, we get better progress. I did change things on my Stormtrooper Han. I brought him to gear 12. I added the Zeta. Those were things that we didn't have. But you didn't see me test out Sana too much last 5v5 season because it was... I don't know if we even had a win with it. Maybe we had one win up against something weak, but for the most part what I really felt was Sana herself was not survivable enough to give us a fighting chance up against a lot of squads. So, and that was kind of proven out up against that Jedi squad, because that Jedi squad was no good, and for Sana to not be able to clear that, that's a pretty strong sign that we need to wait on her. Like I've been waiting on BT1 and 000, where I haven't felt like they have been too good at 3 stars. Type of thing where we need to wait. So Sortie here, the reason I'm not using BT1 and 000 here is I did a bunch of testing with them last 3v3 season with Sortie lead, and it wasn't good. Like, we didn't do anything, and I have been able to get a lot of use out of with Sortie. I think usually I do IG88, but I decided to hold him back. Could have done IPD, but Sortie is a very good lead with T3 and 4. I think I might bring T3 and 4 to Relic soon. You can see they make good progress. They do good work. I think this is a great result. This is 0 relics. Mix of Gear 11 and Gear 12 characters. Handling something like we've beaten better things than that. Like, we've taken out some dash squads. Not these Relic 7 dash squads, but we've taken out like lower level dash squads with sortie. This here, this I think is the highlight of the match. So we got Kira, Hondo, and I throw in L3. So the reason I'm doing this is like I want to test out the squad. I don't think there's this, or is this the last squad? This might be the last place to do any testing, so that's why we're doing it here. There's not a lot of AoEs, so I want to just get a feel for it. We're not hitting the captive. I've learned what some of my mistakes have been. One of my mistakes was thinking the protection up was in the stacks of his ability. So we're above. I think I forget where it needs to be. So the captive is gone. We're getting a lot of stacks, making good progress. This is a Gear 12 Hondo with the Omicron. So at first this looks like, oh, are we just going to be stun locked the entire time? Like, am I just going to be eliminated that way? So I throw captive on again. And you can see I throw down the ability block. I want to get rid of Daka first because if we take out anyone else, she's just going to get turn meter and do revive. So Daka needs to be the focus. And you can see we're just getting more and more stacks, and my Hondo is looking great. This is like the first really nice result I've had from my Hondo. Part of that I think is because we didn't do a kit breakdown on his kit, so and I hadn't spent as much time trying to understand it for myself. Oh, and here I unfortunately make a mistake because the characters move around based on how I clicked them. I clicked too fast and didn't catch that I accidentally clicked on K2SO and not 000, so this is not as interesting as what I was hoping for. We still win, but it's despite ourselves. And we don't learn anything, which is the frustration. Alright, so we got all that taken out. This is when I realized I had set the profundity on defense, or rather didn't fix that. Because when I had lower stars on my profundity, I needed the executor on offense to be a more reliable counter. I couldn't rely on a lower star profundity, like a 4 and 5 star profundity. No, a 4-star. I had a 4-star at first. Yeah, I couldn't rely on a 4-star profundity in a grand arena, so I had to set it on defense. Now that I have a 6-star profundity, I don't need to do that anymore. So I needed to update my defense, but I forgot about it. But I guess the positive is stay a little fresh on this counter. Hadn't done it in a... That right there is the mistake that I didn't realize was that buff immunity was on my Houndstooth. So this gets a little scary. It's like, okay, we got to make decent progress. At this point, I'm expecting that I'm going to lose. I just want to have softened this executor up enough that I can clean up. So the Razor Crest is gone, Slave 1 is gone. We should be okay, but with IG 2000 coming out, or what I was expecting was going to be IG 2000, that would still give a pretty decent front line for his executor in any cleanup scenario. And now we can't make the kind of progress towards the contract that I would have wanted, so we're just Yeah. We're just trying to make progress. We got lucky with the payout. And things are okay. We lose Xanadu, but we still have everyone in a decent position. We are able to mark, get to the ultimate first, and now we're great. It's a little scary, but we get away with it. Is in 90% of the time, buff immunity doesn't land on Houndstooth, so I'm not paying attention to it a lot of times. But when that happens, you want to call Houndstooth to assist with the Razor Crest and not the Xanadu Blood, and that would just clear it, and then you're fine. But I wasn't paying attention. We make quick work of this. I always bring out Spy as the first reinforcement up against the Chimera. It doesn't come down to it, but there are scenarios in which it could be an issue. So up against these Ray level ones, I used to send in a burner fleet. I'm just sending in the Finalizer. Well, I guess we've got more fleets now. That's why I'm not doing it anymore. Because we have 2 more fleets. So I feed the turn meter here. Really the only thing I care about is taking out the, was it the MG100? That alone, I would consider a victory. So we feed some more turn meter to the ships. Get real close. But not in a position where we accomplish the goal. But he's got relic pilots and I don't. But the Raddus does great in a cleanup scenario. My Gear 11 pilots up against Hondo. It was something that I used to do deliberately. So even though the Daze is there, I want to get Deflector Shield on the MG100 because that's going to help with feeding the ultimate. Call for the assists. So now that's some good progress. Pull out Poe. We just need to be feeding the cooldowns on that ultimate ability. Deflector shield back on everyone. Now we've taken out 2 of the resistance ships. Got my backup tank. Like everything's going pretty well. Now I could have stayed more focused on some people. I didn't. I'm surprised he got to the ultimate first because I had the resistance ship advantage. But I still got a tank. Like everyone's got the debuffs, but as long as I can wait it out until the debuffs go away, it's fine. And he's got 2 ships that are not as consequential. Debuffs are gone. And from there, that's a win. A win we can be very happy with. Now here, There's an hour and 16 minutes left. My opponent never attacks. He doesn't get any rewards, doesn't even do a lost battle for anything. So it is a good start to this season of 3v3, and I think I learned a lot that I can put forward for the rest of the season. We'll be using Hondo a lot more, testing out my Swolo and a bunch of other scenarios, trying out the Inquisitors in different ways, and figured out which counters work for me, don't work for me. We'll have better datacrons for next week, and we'll increase relic levels on a few of the characters to make some counters work a little better. Palpatine, Savage, strengthen out some of the weaknesses, and just put out the quarterly speculation video for this quarter. I've got the every 6-month video for the single shard farms that I'll be putting out, and then a few other things. We've got a lot of plans to begin this new year's off strong. Thank you for watching. Be safe out there, everyone. Be excellent to each other. This is still Plays Galaxy of Heroes.